Now I just need to move this. And we all know why we do use protection. It's like wearing seatbelts in the car. We never used to do it, but now we do it. And when we go to the airport, if we ever get there again, we have to go through security, don't we? And the resources that you need for a whole range of things, but including youth protection, are on the district website. Now, the district website, if I could just take you through the list with you, and I've got it on the screen here somewhere. There it is. You all know this, and you go to policies and forms on the right. You click on that, and just remember to access that, you need to log in. So as you know, the first section is on rules and bylaws, and then all the insurance information comes in the next block. There's a little section on social media policy, but the one under all the forms and information under all youth programs is in the next block, and this is the area I want to focus on. And it starts out with the 3 forms. The Form 3, which every Rotarian needs to complete if they wish to be involved in youth activities. Not all Rotarians have to do it, only those who are involved in youth activities. And that form is completed under the supervision of the Youth Protection Officer in the club and the President, and sent to the District Secretary, not to me. Then the next one is a Form 4, which you complete when you have renewed your Working with Children check. That happens every 5 years. 5, that's right, 5 years. And you complete that and send it to, it says to me. I'm not quite sure about that, but you can follow that. And then the Form 7, which is the one I'm most interested in, that is the list of all volunteers in the club who are involved in youth activities, giving all the Form 3 and Working with Children information. So that's, I ask for that in July of every year. And usually I get about a 30% response from club when we need to lift that a bit, quite a lot actually, to 100%. There is another form which I notice is not there. That's the Form 9, and that is an incident report in relation to youth protection. And I need to remedy that. It's not in any of the documents anywhere as far as I can see, and it happens so rarely, which is fortunate, but we need to have that up, I think. Then the next in the list is child protection, the child protection presentation, which is what I'm giving you this morning. This is my presentation. And then there's the policy. This is a large document, which you order. If you're a child protection person in the club, you should have that printed out probably. And then there's a code of conduct for working with youth. They're important, both important documents which you should have with you if you're the child protection officer or working closely with youth. So any questions on that information? No? Then under youth exchange, there's a whole range of youth exchange material. But yes, sure.
The Form 3. Yes. Where we've got to have referees.
Yes.
I've filled mine out. Does our protection officer or whatever he's called who collects all that?
Yeah, I'm on. Yeah, I don't know.
Does he have to actually manually ring all our referees?
Okay, I'm
yes.
on. Bye.
Or someone in the club needs to do it, but normally the protection officer, yeah.
The protection officer has to physically ring up. So if you've got 20 club members, he has to ring 40
Yeah,
people.
it's a big job.
And
Yeah.
it has to be done.
It has to be done, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So under youth exchange, the important one there, which has got a broader application, is the protection briefing. And that's a slideshow which goes through a whole range of issues, which is very helpful. And I would recommend that you look at that protection briefing. It talks about what is sexual harassment, what is abuse, and goes through all those kind of definitions. So I would recommend that you look at that at some point. I won't do it now. So, and that's what I wanted to draw your attention to, basically, on the district website. Are there no other comments or questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
getting back to the Form 3, it has been my experience that quite a few members do not want to complete a Form 3 because they argue that they're not directly involved in youth programs. Now, I understand from Philip that that makes the Rotary insurance null and void for that individual. And we're not in a position where we can insist that they complete the Form 3, so there's a bit of a problem there. Philip, would you like to enlarge upon that?
Yes, what it relates to is that if they're not prepared to complete that form, then they're not entitled to be involved in a particular event that has youth involved. And we're not talking where somebody sits beside a youth at a normal club meeting. We're talking about where they participate in a actual youth project or event where they are likely to be one-on-one. That's where if they don't adhere to that, then the club should take a strong line and not allow them to be involved in that particular youth event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so no Form 3, no participation in youth activities.
Yep. Correct.
And I mean, there are heavy fines for if someone's working in the youth area without a working with children check. It's a large amount of money. I think $160,000. So you don't want that. So I'm going to mute everybody. By the way, there's a bit of sound in the background. So
Brian, there is a question there I saw from Barry down in the chat area. You may wish to
okay. Let me have a look. Does the Form 7 have to be done in July, or could it be done earlier? Well, it can be done at any time, really. It's just that the Protection Officer, District Protection Officer, kind of has an annual roundup. I mean, I'm still getting Form 7s, and here we are getting towards the end of the year. I don't mind. I just like to get them anyway. So yes, Barry, that's the answer to that question. Yes, sorry.
Sorry, Brian, can I push it a little bit further? From a youth exchange point of view, normally we have kids arriving early in July.
Yeah.
Or we can place any of those inbound students. We need a complete roundup of all Form 3, working with children, and Form 7. And that means if you don't have it, then I'm chasing club by club by club.
Yeah.
This year's round of 5 outbound kids and 5 inbound kids resulted in 140 new contacts into our system that needed to be followed up.
So you're suggesting it should be done earlier?
If you could, yes.
Yeah, okay. When do you need to know?
I think having it done in May would be fantastic.
All done by, yeah, okay.
That's a changeover issue in a normal year too. So not sure how we manage it.
Of course, Youth Exchange has its own protection officer, doesn't it?
It does.
And that person concerns itself with this very issue, yeah.
Yes.
But okay, I take that on board. Thanks, Barry.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll pass that on to David Hanlon, and yeah, you might like to do that as well. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Can you all see that? Hang on.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's back.
Need to go back. I can't go back. Although someone else has arrived. Okay, so Rotary International has a statement of conduct for working with youth, which we need to be aware of, and that's it there. There'll be no surprises there. We just got to do our best to, best of our ability to protect children and young people from physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. So that is the RI statement of conduct from which everything else flows within Rotary. And it's everybody's responsibility. That goes without saying. And now the scope of youth protection covers all those areas on the list, but there are lots more. Clubs have their own programs. I know when I was in Sales Central, we had a camping program for young people. They don't have it because it doesn't exist anymore, but that faded out a few years ago. But there are all those sorts of activities going on as well. there's all those in the list. And I'm involved with MUNA now, of course, and youth protection is a big issue in that program. Not to mention youth exchange, which we already touched on. It's a major issue.
Brian, it's Kerry. Can I just interrupt?
Yes.
You have a question on the chat panel around you, and you may have addressed it in a little bit before. What sort of activities are we talking about with our youth?
Well, that's the list that that's the list there, and any club activity involving youth as well. Did someone wish to comment on that? Because I can't see the chat section when I'm doing a screen share.
Hi, is a question. So, Julie, does that answer your question enough?
I suppose, can you hear me? It's
Yes,
Julie.
I can.
Yeah, I suppose one of my questions, I'm Julie, I'm from East Spencer Sunrise Rotary. So we run our monthly market where, of course, there's heaps of kids around. Do we all need to have working with children checks?
I would say that was an incidental, that's an incidental contact.
Yeah.
I would say no to that. If you went to a school and ran a barbecue or something, I'd say you had to have a working with children, because that's not incidental. I mean, at a market with their parents and, you know, family and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an admin manager in a college, so I'm across the working with children stuff.
Yeah, sure.
A lot. It's just more like our Rotary. We don't do a lot with youth in such because our market is our big fundraiser.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in the
some other programs coming up, so it's
So I'm in the SES, and we need to have a working with children check where we go to schools for publicity. But we obviously, in a car accident, you're dealing with children sometimes. We don't need a working with children for that, because that's, well, it's more than incidental, but it's a different circumstance. Yeah.
Brian, probably a clear way might be to describe it. If there is a potential for a Rotarian to be on a one-on-one situation, then that is the definite scenario where it is required.
Yeah, thanks, Philip.
There's a potential.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yes, thank you very much for that.
Yeah,
Any other questions?
Yeah, Brian, I just add a couple there. Junior Community Awards is pretty strong down in East Gippsland particularly, and people go to the schools and get associated.
Well, that'll be in a school program.
That's right. And there's now also, in addition to Interact, there's now a thing called Early Act, which is for primary school based.
Yeah, well, you definitely need working with children in those circumstances, yeah.
What about, we have Margaret. You there, Margaret? We have a...
Yeah, I'm here. I just had to take off mute.
Yeah. What's it called when we do the, the high schools do the speech?
Yeah, well, that's primary schools. I would have thought we'd need it for the
now what do you call
public
that
speaking.
Yeah, we have a public speaking program.
Such a competition, is it? And
yes, yes. And at the end of it, they all come and give their different talks, and then there's a winner and all that. But we have one person that all coordinates it. Do you need it in that sort of?
Yeah, that's a school focus, that program. So you really need working with children check with that. Yeah.
Brian?
Yes, Don?
Yeah, just to remind everybody, GPs don't need a working with children because they're dealing with children every day.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. But it's that's interesting, but it's not of our concern, I suppose. But that's
no. We've had several questions from our Rotary members. You know, I'm a GP. I don't need this. So when I investigated, no, they don't.
Okay.
Don, what about teachers? Because I was made to get one, even though I actually have VIT registration.
Well, I'll get to that. I've got a slide on that. Okay. So, shall we move on?
Brian, it's Bill from Foster Rotary.
Bill.
Form 3 regarding Friends of Rotary.
Yes.
If they were to do the same work as you've in the scope.
Well, I think it covers all volunteers. So yes, Friends of Rotary would need to complete it if they're involved in youth activities.
Right. Yep.
In my view, because Form 7 has a list of volunteers. It doesn't say list of Rotarians involved in youth activities. It's list of volunteers.
Right. Yep.
So that's my view.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Right, will we move on, or are we all set? Right. Now, as I said earlier, there are special arrangements for youth exchange. So if you're involved in youth exchange, you need to go through all that material. And again, I would recommend that you watch that slide presentation on youth protection issues. Let's look at some definitions. Risk management. Very important that you have risk management procedures in place for all activities, as Phil will tell you, but especially with youth activities. So that should be second nature to what we for our project work these days. Now, responsibility, authority and accountability. We've talked about the Rotary International Statement of Conduct for working with youth. And then there is the Rotary International Abuse and Harassment Prevention Training Manual and Leaders Guide. That is available on the RI website. And the other piece of accountability is the Working with Children Act of Victoria. And yes, was that a comment? No. Now, the check is only a starting point. It doesn't say a person is suitable to undertake youth activity. That's a decision that Rotary needs to make. But it is a check that they don't have a history which would prevent them working with children. And organisations like Rotary need to be vigilant at all times and do thorough reference checks and establish sound ongoing supervision practices for children so that they can be safe from harm. So it's only the beginning and not the whole story.
Sorry, can I just interrupt? Sorry.
Yeah.
But I run through Rotary a busy feed. It's a special needs dance class, and I was able to do it through the special needs school. But I have an outside volunteer that's not a Rotarian that does the teaching for me. She's got her working with children, but does she need to fill out one of those Form 3s as well?
Is it a Rotary program?
Yes.
I would say yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because she's done the working with children, but this Form 3s are just come up for us. So you think she would need to fill it because she's not a Rotarian. She's
she's a volunteer. Yeah.
That assists me.
I would say yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brian, can I interrupt there too?
Yes. Who's that?
It's Barry.
Yes, Barry.
Question to Adrian and Mark. Do non-Rotarians need to complete the Form 3, Form 4 if they're involved in youth activities that are organised through Rotary?
Well, that's where I come in.
Yes, Dawn, I get
really
that.
the same question that's just been
The same
answered,
question.
Harry. In my view, the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Humphreys?
Mr. Humphreys muted.
Silent, Mark.
There we go. Sorry, I had a double mute on. Yes, I agree with both Brian and Adrian on that one.
Okay.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Righto. Any other comments on the work? I'm going to get to the VIT next. So, okay. Teachers. Under the Act, a teacher who is registered under the Victorian Institute of Teaching Act is exempt from a working with children check. However, they do have an obligation to advise any organisation they're associated with, like Rotary, if that registration is withdrawn or they've committed some offence which affects their registration. You can check whether a teacher is registered by going to the VIT website and typing in the name, and it'll tell you whether that person is registered. Now, I know that in the past we have insisted on teachers working with children checks, and I know some clubs still do, but under the Act, I personally don't believe it's required.
Sorry, Brian.
Yep.
Can I interrupt there?
Who is that?
It's Mark.
Yeah, Mark.
Hang on, I'll put my camera on for you. Approximately 18 months ago, all teachers are required to notify Working with Children's Victoria that they are doing voluntary work.
Okay.
With any other organisation. I will put the link up in the chat for everyone to see. They don't specifically need a Working with Children's check, but they must notify them of their voluntary work.
Is there a form, or is it done online, or what's the mechanic?
It's all done online.
Okay.
I'll put the link in the chat.
I'll add that to my presentation too. Thank you for that extra bit of information.
No worries.
I wasn't aware of it.
Yep.
But that doesn't change the basic point that they don't require a Working with Children.
They don't require a check. No, it's just a notification of.
They need to notify the Working with Children people.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Mark. Right.
Brian, it's just Kerry. I've got a couple of questions that have come in for you.
Yes.
One from Rick. Will the recording be sent to everyone online or made generally available?
Yes, of course. I hadn't thought about how we would do that. Yeah, but we probably maybe put it on the district website, or I can email it to everybody who's here today.
Brian, we can get it put in the district's YouTube channel and send out the link.
Okay. Who will I send it to?
Rob Cook.
Rob Cook. Okay. Was there another question, Kerry?
Yes, there is. It goes back to the earlier discussion around the definition of youth activities and incidental contact. The actual question is for Phil and how the insurers view the interaction of incidentals.
I think that was kind of answered. Yeah.
Yeah, it basically gets back to if there's a potential for a Rotarian to be on a one-on-one situation, that Rotarian must comply with the forms, and if they don't, the club would need to take steps to advise that they cannot be involved in a particular youth project or event if they don't comply.
Okay.
Okay. Ian, are you happy with that answer, or would you like to talk to Phil a little bit more about it?
Talk to me offline if you like, Steph.
Yeah, contact Phil if you've got any questions on that. Yeah.
And right, thanks, Mark, for putting up the link.
Okay. Where did that go up to?
It's gone into the chat room.
On the chat room, okay. Then we have in Victoria, we have the Commission for Children and Young People, and there are the 7 child safe standards, which I won't dwell on, but these are the standards which all organisations, including Rotary, need to have in mind when they're putting together youth programs. It involves, having participation from children in development of programs, developing processes for responding to suspected child abuse, and we've got that in place. So I think we would probably fall in line with all 7 standards. We can always do better, but we need to have these in mind, or you need to have these in mind in your clubs when you're putting together youth and children's activities. You're probably aware of these anyway, but I just need to draw them for your attention. So Rotarians need these 3 things to be involved in youth activities, and that is basically the Form 3, with 3 referees which need to be consulted by a responsible member of the club, any personal declaration of a criminal history of any kind, and the details of the Working with Children card. That's the number and expiry date and the like. So that's what all Rotarians and youth and volunteers involved in youth programs in Rotary need to do. And I think that's our basic procedure that we always need to follow. So the district has a number of roles in the youth protection area. and to have a district governor and a district protection officer have particular roles. And there's also a district review committee. The review committee looks at policies and procedures, conducts an annual review. Mind you, I don't think there's been an annual review for a couple of years, but it's done in other ways, I guess. And meet 3 to 5 business days after an allegation of abuse or harassment is received. Conduct an appraisal following law enforcement investigations about whether action needs to be taken, and so on. So that's the role of the committee. It meets on an as-need basis or annually to review district policies and procedures. Now, the insurer, as Phil Thurgood would know, has some expectations. In the public liability policy, there's a sexual molestation endorsement, which provides indemnity for Rotary clubs arising from molestations or occurrences. And this endorsement is provided by the insurance with the expectation that risk management procedures outlined in the document, that is the district protection document, that they're being followed. Those procedures are being followed to the best of their ability. Now, Phil, you want to comment on this at all?
Yes, this particular endorsement that has been obtained for Rotary is unique in the insurance market. It's $2 million in cover, but it is extremely hard to get. Normally now, you just don't get it virtually, but Rotary has been able to secure it, primarily I think because of the experiential history and also the risk management adherence. So whilst every club does their best, we need to be continually adhering to those rules, because as soon as there is a fall in standard or something that causes an incident, then that particular endorsement could be withdrawn, and it is not, as I mentioned before, readily available to organisations. Virtually, nearly Rotary is probably quite unique in having that particular endorsement.
Any comments or questions on that matter? So, in a sense, we're in a privileged position, aren't we? But we've got to perform, though.
Yeah, got to maintain what we are currently doing, just be on. And as you mentioned, just do a regular review or audit so that it's adhered to. Yeah.
Well, that's the role of a district review committee, I'd imagine, as well as the DG and the protection officer.
Protection officers as well.
Yeah, protection officers in the clubs, yeah. Thank you for that, Phil.
Brian, just before you continue on, you might want to go back to the slide around the standards. There's a question from Barry. Barry's written that he believes standards 1 and 6 in that list are the ones that are being or under question across our district. I don't know if you want to comment more, or Barry would like to speak to that.
Yeah, Barry, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, Brian. Number 1 is develop strategies to embed an organisational culture. And here we are talking 3 years, 4 years into the process that I've been involved, and people are wondering where we need a Form 3, where we need a Form 4. And I think point 6, to develop strategies to identify and reduce or remove risks. We've just had conversations about people being a one-on-one with a young person, but imagine if we've got 8 young people in a room at a function, and maybe they're all sitting at a separate table at a dinner, and we've got a person who behaves inappropriately around those kids, might walk around, put a hand on a shoulder, or otherwise touch inappropriately or say something inappropriate. That's a breach of the standard, and yet the definition that we've talked about is they're not one-on-one, so therefore there's not an issue. So they're my 2 really big concerns for young people.
Yeah. Well, those concerns are noted on, Barry. I think they're real ones, and especially, I guess you're speaking from a youth exchange back there, but it's not only confined to that.
Oh no, not at all. I work with young people in lots of different settings.
What would you suggest that the district do on this?
I know that it's going to be throwing a grenade into the room, but I don't believe that Rotarians can say, I won't have a Form 3.
Oh, I see what you mean.
I
Yeah.
think that we need to be pushing every Rotarian
that's,
requires a Form 3. It looks like Phil's agreeing with me.
yes.
Yeah, and I know I've had a conversation with Mark.
It eliminates any potential issue if everybody does it here.
I want to know that I can trust everybody in that club to have complied. I assume that someone has a driver's license. I don't get in the car and say, have you got his driver's license? But I want to know that if I have an activity happening where I bring a young person into the club, or a Rotarian goes into a school, or goes to another activity where there are young people, that we are 100% as managing, I'm struggling for language here, you can see I'm frustrated. I want to know that we've got strategies that identify and reduce or remove the risks of child abuse. I know we can't prevent it, but if we've got that insurance, we should be doing more than we are.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think everybody should have a Form 3, but pragmatically, you know, it may not be possible. But I know some clubs insist that when a new member comes along, they go through all the normal procedures for a new member, and they need to fill out a Form 3 at that point. Now, I think that's a good practice. It doesn't solve the immediate problem, but eventually it will.
If that was a 4-year policy statement or a 3-year statement or something like that, that Adrian, I know you're coming to the end of your term, and Mark and Bill put in place, and we gradually then operated on it. And I'm not being critical of the people here attending, because you guys are seriously aware of what child protection means, and I love the fact that you're doing that work. But if we get it organised, then we know that we're doing our best for our young people, because they're our future anyway.
Yeah.
Enough participating from me.
Yeah, this is a policy question which I think the district board might need to take up and work through. So
I would support that.
Yeah, well, there seems to be
something that becomes part of the membership of Rotary.
Adrian and Mark, you'll note the comments in the meeting on this, and I'll have a think about it. But I'm on the way out too. But I might, in my final report, say something about it. Thank you for those comments, Barry.
Just a quick one, if I may, Rick Haler. I have to leave because my wife's dragging me away, but I've got John Barnes there looking after our club. So, John, I'll leave you and I'll disappear. Thanks
very much for coming.
My pleasure.
Right.
Brian, just before you move on, there is another question from Maria.
Yep.
It's around project proposal forms, checklists, and youth-focused events. Maria might like to expand on her question too. It touches on to Forms 3 and Form 7 and the definition of all volunteers.
Right.
Thanks, Jane. Hi, Brian. It's Maria. I'm a new e-club member from Peninsula Rotary 2.0. And I guess for me, I'm still learning, going through all the resources as a new member. And I've come across the project proposal sheet that you're supposed to fill in before any projects are run or workshops are run for the Rotary Club. And I guess coming from a project management side, especially with events management, if there is, you know, in terms of risk management, should there be a project template that's a checklist that we identify who are the contacts for the day, who's running the event, and then if it is identified as a youth-focused event, that there is a checklist, you know, weeks in advance to say, have the people got their Form 3 and are they also listed in the most current update of the Form 7? So,
yeah, thanks, Maria. That's a very good question, and I'm afraid I can't answer it. Is it in the Phil? Is it in the Is it in the risk management stuff?
It is in the risk management. Yes, it is. It's there's an abbreviated form with regards various projects that are undertaking, and that needs to be sent through to the project officer of the club, and then on to myself. When it gets into more complex events, there are risk management templates. Probably one of the so they are there. Then when you start getting into quite complex ones like the Dutch festival where there's 10,000 people attending, they've put together an extremely elaborate document that picks up all the context, all the emergency services, and that is used or sent out to somebody who starts to engage in a larger project outside what you would call just a standard risk event.
Yeah.
So it is available, but it does get,
Thanks, Phil.
as the event gets more complex,
Yeah,
it does require a bit more professional attitude towards it.
Are you happy with that, Maria?
And I guess I agree with the bigger events, but also even for the smaller localized events, I think it's important that we have just a simple template, because as a newbie, I don't know where to find those things. And I suppose when I'm going for the project proposal sheets, I would kind of expect that it would be there as one of the checklists, like just a really simple one, nothing to involve.
Yeah.
Just identifying.
There is
Sorry,
a single
Phil.
page.
Thank you.
There is a single page project, and it relates, for example, it might be a Bunnings barbecue, and it goes through
exactly that event.
The 14 questions thereabouts, gets signed off by the organiser or club secretary, and then gets passed through to me. If there's any issues with it, I'll either on-forward it to the insurers, or I would respond if there's a particular answer that I think needs to be elaborated on.
And Philip, of course, is a district insurance officer. So those forms are in the insurance section on the website.
Okay, yeah, I'll put that down, insurance.
But if you do have a particular question or query on those forms, or a better way of drafting them from your background, certainly let me know, and we can develop that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the other question I had too, sorry, coming from a newbie again, and especially with the e-club process where we're trying to attract younger members, is there a specific e-relationship risk management outline that says, you know, certain relationships that might be started at a club level, but then, you know, because they're local, they might create ongoing mentoring relationships that's outside of the club, but it's done online, for example. Do we have mandates around those, like future-proofing the clubs around the e-access and e-contacts?
Social media policy there, but
I said a social media policy, but specifically on child protection.
No,
and
there isn't. I don't believe there is.
Yeah.
And I'm a member of an e-club too, so
yeah,
there are a few things that e-clubs need to adapt to. Like that. Yeah.
Good to know. I'm just making sure that I haven't missed anything vital
you haven't
through
missed
my
anything.
research.
You haven't missed anything. Look,
Thank
I'd like
you,
to move
everyone. I
on.
really
If you don't,
Brian,
yes.
Brian, it's Alan Colley. I just want to ask one quick question. I've never ever heard it answered. I fully agree that everybody should have a Form 3. I don't think that's, you know, even questionable. I think we all should. But if the club protection officer does the checks and he finds that 2 out of 3 say, oh yeah, he's a good person, or she's, and the third one doesn't, who makes the final decision as to whether on that Form 3? Is it the president, or does it have to go to district, or what? I mean, it's fine if everyone's clear, checks out, great. But what happens if you get one, or perhaps even 2 of the referees say, oh no, I don't know about that?
Depends on what the issue is, Alan. I mean, he might have a violent temper or something, or that's treated differently if he's got a history of child abuse, for example, which should have been picked up by other means, by the way, but or I don't know.
Who makes that decision, Brian? Like, is it the president, or does it go to district, or where's it go?
Well, I think it would. Yeah, I would think it would go to the.
Sorry, I would have thought it would need to be referred up through to district for a club to be probably instructed how to deal with it, or assisted with dealing with it. Probably, yeah, depending on the nature of the issue, I would go to the district governor, probably. Yeah. I mean, I have had them referred to me, and I've worked through it, but you really have to use, the president needs to use his or her judgment, I think, there. I don't think you can have a hard and fast rule. Really, with the referees, you kind of,
trying to work out whether the person's suitable to be engaged in youth activities. In a way, that's what you're doing. So then it becomes a matter of judgment. What you do. That's unsatisfactory answer, Alan, I know.
Oh, that's
I
fine.
think
It hasn't happened yet, but I'll bet it's going to happen somewhere down the
It
track.
has happened. I've dealt with at least one, and we worked through it okay. Yeah, we worked it through all right. Yeah, I forgot. No, and I don't want to tell you the detail. It was a behavioural thing, really. So we just dealt with it. I don't know whether, Adrian, you've got anything to say about that?
That's the other thing, though, too, Brian. If they've got a working with children's card, then you probably it may just be a one-off incident. But I mean, we just got to make sure that it isn't something really serious. Anyway, I'll let you move on. Thanks,
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If the third person said, "Well, I saw him yelling and screaming at a 16-year-old kid," well, that's has to be dealt with. Yeah. Yeah.
Look,
I think I understand that, and I have been involved with one incident, and probably Adrian has too. But
I think the important thing, it's a bit like you're checking references for someone applying for a job. You form an impression by speaking to the referees of that person, and if you have 3 referees and all 3 give a great glowing reference, there's no issue. But if 2 out of the 3 had qualifications or concerns which could be connected directly to whether they were a suitable person or not to be working with kids within Rotary, then you would have to run with gut feeling, I think, on that one and say, well, this person really hasn't been supported by his referees, and you would have to actually probably reject it. Now, that would be a tough thing to do, but at the end of the day, it's a weeding out process. That's what we're actually trying to do, to make sure that people who have the Form 3 are appropriate to be working with kids in our district.
Yep.
It's also, it would raise a question. It would raise a question too if you had your referees, somebody who you've nominated to support your character, to all of a sudden be questioning your character. So it would be I would have thought, very an unusual circumstance, and certainly something warranted further investigation.
Dawn, did you have something?
Dawn Friend here. One of the referees can be a fellow Rotarian, which is what I've done, and I've used long-standing friends for the other 2. Now, does the protection officer within the club, does he just accept that he doesn't have to contact that particular Rotarian? I mean, we're all in the same group. If I use one of my Rotarians as my first referee, does the protection officer have to verify that, or like he does with the other 2?
I would say, for the sake of the process, yes.
Yeah.
So can I just ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah. In regards to the person where we've got 2 people saying yes and 2 people saying no in regards to referees, is there a possibility of us getting sued in any way if we have this discussion with this person and we say, yes, you're okay to come and join Rotary as a volunteer, and then something happens? Is there a possibility of us getting sued?
Well.
No,
Well,
just a thought.
Yeah, I suppose anything's possible these days, isn't it? Really,
yeah,
but
possible.
Everything looks at I suppose the steps are. Has a club been reasonable in its steps to qualify volunteers, members, etc.? And if they have, it is less likely something like that could happen. But they do need to take steps to, like we're talking about, the interviews or the cross-referencing, and if you do that, that's reasonable. And that's, but yeah, the scenarios that we could probably prop up all sorts of scenarios where there's a potential. But again, what we're trying to put in place is measures and procedures that hopefully pick up these sorts of incidents and eliminate it.
Yeah, thank you for that, Phil. I'd like to move on. There's not much left on this presentation, and then I'll shut the meeting down. And then if you've got any other questions like that, or we'll have those at the end if you don't mind. So on into the reporting, there is another form, Form 9, which needs to be completed. And I've only seen this once, but I have seen it. And it needs to be submitted within 72 hours to the District Governor, the District Youth Protection Officer and the District Insurance Officer. And then the process starts. The review committee and all that gets going to deal with the matter as expeditiously as possible. We have legal responsibilities. Every adult who reasonably believes that a child has been abused, whether in their organisation or not, has an obligation to report that belief to authorities. Now, that applies to the whole community. And all adults, that's 18 years, people aged 18 years and over, are covered by this particular act, whose name I have not listed there, but you probably all heard of it. So that's, I think it's a failure to disclose act, and we're all covered by that.
Well, just a comment on the top that 72 hours. The reason is, like any incident, the longer you leave the reporting or recording of it, the less likely it is to be as accurate. So the quicker it's dealt with in reporting or documentation and then reporting, it's likely to be more accurate of the event or incident. So that's why it needs to be done very quickly.
Done quickly, yeah. Thank you. Our club has responsibilities in this area, needs to appoint a club protection officer. I think most clubs have one of those, but we need to be sure that we have one. Ensure that all volunteers complete a Form 3 and the reference checks are conducted. We've been through all this. And you need to maintain a copy for 5 years of the Form 3 with details of the Working with Children card. A copy needs to go to the district secretary. The district secretary keeps these filed away confidentially, and so there are 2 places where they're held. There we are, that's the last dot. The club president has responsibilities. Need to certify that the Form 3s have been reference checked and confirms that the district and RI requirements have been met. Ensures that all appropriate training is done for Rotarians and volunteers, and that is certified to be involved in the Rotary Youth Exchange program if the club is involved in that. And it verifies that Youth Exchange counsellors have the relevant police and reference checks. Counsellors are the only Rotarians in Rotary that need a police check, and confirms that they meet the district and RI requirements. This is the club protection officer responsibilities. It's just managing the process, making sure that all the screening's done and the Form 3s are done, and that the Form 7 is sent to the district protection officer at the beginning of the year, although there's been a suggestion that needs to be done earlier now. And that the district secretary receives all copies of all Form 3s and maintains records for 5 years. So that's the job of the club protection officer. I hope your clubs have all got one. I just happen to be the club protection officer for my club, so I know something about it. So what else? The remainder of the policy document, which I'm encouraging you to all read, there's more detailed material on screening and risk management, retention of records and special arrangements for youth exchange, which I encourage you to study. And that's it. For me, is there any general comments or questions that people may wish to raise? By the way, if anybody needs to leave, they're free to go now.
Thank you. Okay, Brian, it's Kerry. There's a few comments that came in, and it goes back to where we were talking about the standards in that section, the child standards. Drew have found that they greatly improved compliance by having the form completed actually at the meetings. And
sorry, which form is that?
having the Form 3 completed at the meeting.
Oh, but actually in the meeting.
Yeah, printing that off and having it in. That actually stimulated a little bit of
Ian,
this.
can I just comment, please, Kerry?
Yes, certainly.
The working with children application, a lot of the more senior members struggle with the technology, and by doing the application online and then giving them the Form 3 at the same time, we've not quite got 100%, but we're very close.
That's Druin. Yeah.
Yeah, at Druin. Yeah.
Okay. That's excellent.
It's a good approach to it.
Were there other questions?
There's some other feedback and some other questions. Yes, one of the ones was around if we're pushing the compliance side, will it have an impact on membership? There was a note that it's also about balancing the cost to Rotary and to our young people. I don't know if Barry and some others would like, there's a little bit of discussion around that. So I don't know if someone would like to comment on that for you, or you'd like to comment.
Brian, I have to leave now. Sorry.
All right, Don. See you.
See you
Thank
soon.
you for coming.
You're welcome.
Kerry, I don't want to beat the drum too hard, but the question was, if we insist on people completing Form 3, does that affect membership? And my response to that is, I guess, in two parts. And the first is, are you worried that you're hiding something? And the second answer to that is, can we afford not to be sure that our clubs are fitting societal norms? If that's what society is saying we should be doing, how can we be arguing against it?
Like, will people give up driving because they had to wear seatbelts? In a way.
Not any longer, but there was an argument.
No, in the day itself, in that day.
So it's Mark here. Agree 100%, Barry. To me, at the end of the day, if we're going to lose members because of protection, I'd much rather have our children overly protected than underprotected. So couldn't agree more. You know,
okay.
Sacrifice a few members for our youth any day.
Kerry, were there other questions?
Oh no, the rest were just comments around the discussion, but I'd having been the district youth officer and now community, I would actually support what Mark was saying, that it would be better to be protecting our youth and lose a few members, but it also extends to Rotary's reputation. And I think as a professional body, we need to be reflecting that.
Okay.
Brian, Glenn Ellum is mine from the Rotary Club of Frankston North.
Yes, Glenn, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. It seems that we're all looking for a black and white answer to this problem. And really, we're all aware the fact that we're talking about it surely is drawing enough of an awareness through our clubs. We should be, everybody is well aware of child protection and the need to ensure that we protect ourselves from litigation and whatever. The fact that we're talking about it, is that not enough to allow us as individual clubs to make a decision in relation to this matter on individuals by, if there's 3 referees, 2 or 4, 1 against, surely we could take that member into the club and then from then on monitor what is going on, ensuring that that person is not being put in a position where a controversy may arise without at least there being some other supervision. And the fact that we are now so much aware of this circumstance, should we not be ensuring that these things are being brought on a regular basis of the club so all members are aware, and that may obviate the need to then maintain a monitoring of someone who is a bit doubtful?
Any comments on that?
I know that's leaving a lot up to the clubs to do that, but surely that's the way to go. We can't keep referring everything to district and coming back again. It only requires that should there be a necessary incident, and then the action would take place. But surely we can leave enough credence with the clubs to make decisions as we've done over the years and upheld the standards of Rotary and the protocols and whatever, without needing to run around like headless chooks trying to cover everything at a moment.
Well, Adrian, you got a comment there?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I agree with Glenn to the point. I don't think it's something that district can mandate per se. While I'm totally in support of 100% completion of Form 3s, I don't think we as a district can say you can't be a member of a club, because each club is an individual body anyway. And sure, they sign up and they abide by Rotary principles and policies and so on. But in the end, it's the club that needs to decide if they are going to take that line, I think. And it could even be something that potentially could be included in club bylaws or whatever, that it is a requirement that members complete Form 3 if a club so wish to do it that way. But it's not something district can enforce, but it is certainly something district can encourage, and we certainly do that.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Glenn, and your comment, Adrian. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Brian, can I jump in on that one too? Glenn,
Yes,
I like what you were saying about how the club handles it. I'm thinking that perhaps from district level, we could provide a one-page guidance for presidents and club protection officers on how to deal with a situation like that.
Certainly.
And then if you're not sure, we do have a district protection officer, and I would have thought that that's where you go to Brian or his replacement and say, hey, person X, 2 out of 3 said yes, the third said no. As a club, the president and the club protection officer together, we got going. We said to those referees, one of you has said this, we're a bit concerned, and go through a process. Is there another person we should talk to? How do you manage it then? You can't take it to your board. I was talking to Ian from Druin about this earlier. You can hardly take it to the board and say, oh, well, we've had 2 of Barry's referees said yes. One said no, he's as dodgy as a 3-cent piece. Because of the privacy in a club, no matter how big the club is, we still know lots of people. But there needs to be a process that you can then follow through. You can be sure. I don't like the idea of saying we'll bring them in and we'll just keep an eye on them. But I do think we need a process that makes sure that we're okay.
Okay.
Maybe district support.
Are there any other questions and comments? That was a very helpful discussion.
Just a comment on that. If we do come across a situation like that, and or a club takes a step to refuse that potential member, based on that information, there could be reputational damage, and hence Rotary could then be sued from that perspective if a member is excluded on a investigation that is only been partially done. So so you have the reverse side of it as well. So it may be that.
Brian.
Don. Yes, Don.
It's highly unlikely, and I don't believe it has ever happened, that there's been a negative referee on a Form 3. Nobody's going to put forward, and I don't think have to date, put forward somebody who would give them a negative reference. The issue is going to be where somebody is found to be non-compliant. And that's where it comes down to the various individuals. Adrian, at the moment, you and I are both aware of that, and we're aware of what having to intervene with a Rotarian for a club on behalf of the district for a club, and you'll get bad press for the rest of your life. But that's all right. That's part of the bailiwick, Mark. If you'll probably wind up with it. I don't know whether Adrian has, but I know certainly Brian and I both had situations where we needed to take action on behalf of Rotary to deal with that, with an issue. We are not going to get referees who are going to say this is a bad bloke, because the bad bloke's the one that puts the name up.
Yep.
So I think that's really a red herring, and I'm absolutely with Barry with respect to every Rotarian ought to be required, because Rotary clubs deal with children. Oh, I forgot about you, Paul. You're going to wind up with this as well. Rotary, you're going to wind up with that situation, and we've just got to.
Thanks, Don. Yeah.
I still have places where I'm held in in great dishonour because of having to deal with an issue, particularly to do with youth exchange.
Can't believe it.
In
Can't
my
believe
year.
I had a question there from someone who put their hand up. Yeah, no. Anyone else? Any other comments or questions?
Brian, Dawn
Yeah.
friend here. I thought you said you did have one incident with a referee.
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
If you want
Yes.
a name, that's fine. But
Yeah.
the other chap said there hasn't been one, but I thought you said previously that you did have one.
Yeah, I did have one, but it wasn't so much a no, or it wasn't highly critical, but it just said that that person is not really suitable for this. It was in relation to a particular activity, I think. It wasn't a major issue, I have to say. I think he might have picked the wrong referee, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
it wasn't a strongly negative thing, but it was a suggestion.
It did happen.
It did happen. But I agree that Donna, with Don, that it doesn't. It's very rare, and if it only happened in that case with me. Any other comments or questions? Well, we might wrap it up if.
Sorry,
Yes.
sorry, Brian. Yeah, can I just jump in one extra comment there? Could I encourage everybody that's here to get onto the Rotary online training and do the mandatory youth protection online course? There's some fantastic tools and all that there that really cover off the Rotary perspective, because we as Rotarians should hold ourselves up even higher than the local government and requirements, and the online Rotary tool is a great tool for doing that.
We probably should put that on the district website, shouldn't we, that link?
Yes, I can put it on the
Can
link.
you do that?
Yes, but everyone needs to have an online
it's very
already
good. Yeah,
registered account.
I've done it myself. It's very good.
Yes, it is fantastic.
Yep. Any other comments?
Just a final comment from me, Brian. Thank you very much for organising and running this. It's been a very interesting session and a good amount of questions and answers and discussion. So I think it gives me a lot of confidence seeing a good group like this attend and get back out into the clubs. And it's all part of raising awareness of this, and we have to keep doing it all the time. So great session. Well done. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adrian, very much. And thank you all for your attendance and your contributions. It really made for an excellent session. So I'm going to sign you all off. Go and have a nice rest of your day.